Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth.
My son did not give away their amanat, did not steal their amanat, the trusts of them. You think he would divulge their secrets? No. Because we're different. And when they come across vain speech, idle speech, they proceed with dignity. And then your president wants to come to your community and make sure that you're still going to vote for him in November. I hope you send him the right message.
Barakallah feekum, brothers, inshallah, because the second salah is coming now, so please, inshallah, make some room for Imam Umar to go.
He is intentionally, I think, pursuing a policy that is not only inhumane and disgusting to everyone that hoped for something different, but will be consequential in November 2024.
We will fight Joe Biden. We will make sure that we will punish Joe Biden by making him one-term president. If Trump becomes president, I'm sure America will survive Trump just like it survived him first time. It will survive Trump once again.
There are elections for the presidential primary. We are asking our Muslim brothers and sisters, our non-Muslim brothers and sisters, to all come out and vote for free Palestine by writing it in and bubbling it in the election on February 27th.
He has grossly disappointed on this issue and shown a complete lack of humanity. And he cannot campaign on the idea of being the lesser of two evils when the greatest evil that we've seen in our lifetimes is playing out right on our screens with his signature on it.
There's an old saying in American politics, if you want loyalty, buy a dog. Perversely, it's usually the political class who say this, not so much the voters who they betray daily. Now, for the people who like to comment before they listen, I suppose I have to start off with the disclaimer that this morning's briefing is not an endorsement of either side in the war in Israel. I'm presenting this to you as a case study in how other groups decide how to vote, or how not to vote. Biden's done all kinds of things for immigrants, and Arab immigrants in particular. He fought against Trump's so-called Muslim ban. In fact, he overturned it. Trump was the one who put the Muslim ban in place. And there's none of these Arab Americans or Muslims in general in the U.S. who are not affected by it, or didn't directly know someone who was. There has never been anything in the U.S. that targeted Arab Americans like the Muslim ban that Trump enacted. They were up in arms. Well, the ones who didn't vote for him, that is. And yet, after all that, after years of being attacked and demonized by Trump, after seeing Trump take the unprecedented step of moving the U.S.'s embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, which in effect tells the world that the U.S. recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, as opposed to Tel Aviv, which is the real capital, that wasn't merely a slap in the face of the Palestinians. That was Trump dropping trow and leaving a pile of poo in front of every Palestinian's home. The Palestinians consider Jerusalem to be theirs, or at the very least, they don't like the idea that anyone's claiming that it belongs to Israel. The U.S. has tried to put forward a phony neutrality stance on that issue of whether Jerusalem should be considered Israeli, Arab, or both, though wisely, up until Trump, the U.S. never openly declared that it belongs to anyone. Trump, however, did away with that weak pretense of ambiguity and said that Jerusalem is solidly Israeli. No move on Trump's part enraged the Palestinians quite like that did. And then Trump doubled down by helping to make bilateral arrangements with the Arab Gulf states in order to get the corrupt Arab regimes in the Middle East to drop their admittedly token support for Palestine. The Saudi royal family couldn't care less about the Palestinians. The Arab street may care, but the Arab leaders don't. And they're not alone. That whole Arabic saying about me against my brother and I against a stranger, well, in most cases, they only remember the first part. As Dr. John Henry Clark pointed out, the religious corruption in the Middle East is rampant. Our Grandmaster teacher put it best, you can find the most important figures in the region right now routinely drinking scotch, eating pork, and patronizing European harlots. The Arabs were carrying out the slave trade in Africa long before the Europeans did. Just thought I'd throw that in there. But Trump understands the dynamic of how things really work over there, and he capitalized on it. He knew that the Arab street could be as mad as they wanted to be, but those tin-horn despots who actually run things, as long as they're getting caked off, well, the Arab street will simply have to be mad. Banning Muslims, that didn't matter either, because the Arabs who actually mattered, the ones with the money, they would still be able to get into the U.S. and have free access anytime they want. Moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, Arabs cursed Trump's name for the 4 years he was in office. But they also lived in mortal fear that this guy was going to return to the White House. That is, until the last few months. Joe Biden has gone overboard to arm Israel with $14+ billion in weapons. Now keep in mind, you had this UN International Court of Justice that handed down a ruling that there is probable cause to suspect that a genocide is happening in Gaza. Gaza, however, is not Iraq or Afghanistan. It's roughly the size of Detroit. At least that's what the white media likes to say, because everyone knows there's a large concentration of Arab Americans in Dearborn, Michigan, which is right next to Detroit. So the Israelis need $14 billion to handle what they estimate to be about 30,000 gunmen in an area that's only the size of Detroit? The math ain't mathin'. Israel does not need that kind of arms package. It already has the most powerful military in the region and a nuclear arsenal, and the Israelis love to brag about how robust their economy is, why they have a burgeoning tech sector, all of that. So that means that they should be able to foot the bill for their own defense. A number of members of the Knesset have already said this, but apparently Joe Biden and the Americans didn't get the memo. Because Biden was so determined to get Israel that weapons package that he bypassed Congress in order to do it. And every Arab and Muslim in America, and those who watch American news around the world, saw that. And the Israelis have been using those weapons to blast the Palestinians back to the Stone Age. Even a number of the Biden administration officials, when cornered on the issue, have had to admit that there is a little bit of overkill going on, but it's not intentional, mind you. And what has Biden done about that? He's had Kamala Harris give some half-hearted statements saying that civilian casualties are sad and need to be taken seriously. So in other words, she said nothing. Now, Trump is running for re-election, and he's bringing all of that anti-Arab stuff he did in his first term with him. Arabs know this. And even so, the issue of the annihilation of Palestine and Biden's open support for it has so incensed Arab opinion in the U.S. that a large number of them have said that they would rather stay home than vote for Biden. They didn't care what gestures of substantive policies Biden did for them, and he did more than a few. When they felt that he crossed the line, they decided that withholding their vote and letting Biden's rival retake the White House would be their payback. And it didn't take them 2 or 3 election cycles to figure this out. They decided to weaponize their vote immediately. Now, of course, there's not enough Arabs for their vote to matter, not even in Michigan, but even so, they're saying that they're getting on code to send Biden a message because he did something they didn't like. How different their response was from the response of these corrupt and crumbling leaders in the black community. You got these Arabs saying that they don't want Biden to show up, they don't want a photo op with him or anything else. They want him punished for helping Israel attack Palestine. And you don't see anyone coming up to them and berating them and saying, why, Biden overturned Trump's Muslim ban. You ought to be grateful to vote for him. Now, of course, for those who don't get it, this is not about me sticking up for either side in the war. I'm using this as an opportunity to illustrate the difference between how groups who get taken for granted react. In this case, these voters are not loyal because elections aren't about loyalty. It's about business. It's a transaction. And they weren't waiting for the white media to give them permission, and they're not worried about displeasing Biden or the Democrats in the future either. Now here's something else to remember. The Arab vote isn't going to make a difference to the election outcome in Michigan. The black vote, however, will make all the difference. Donald Trump is ahead of Biden in Michigan according to polls, and if this trend holds and Trump winds up winning like he did in 2016, we have to be on alert not to let anyone else claim credit for that. In 2016, you had people, including like Michael Moore, trying to claim that it was the unions that handed Michigan to Trump. Well, then I guess the unions didn't have a problem with Trump 4 years later in 2020, now did they? No, it was the black vote who decided Trump was not going to carry the state. The black vote or the swing vote there. In Georgia, you had Andrew Yang falsely claiming that it wasn't the black vote that carried that state. Instead, it was Asian votes that handed it to Biden. Asians break for the Republicans by and large, and in Georgia, you can tell exactly who the Republicans blame for Trump's loss because they went directly after the black voting bloc in Atlanta, and they went after Atlanta alone. That's the point of this morning's briefing. The Arab vote is angry with him and growing angrier by the day, and they're not trying to find ways to get him to show up so that some imam can get himself some quickie clout. They're not telling Biden, go ahead and come to the local mosque so you can use the worshipers here as a backdrop for your photo op. Passions over the war in Gaza are red hot, but the decision that you see these Arabs making here in the U.S. about who they're going to vote for, or rather who they're not going to vote for, that is cold and clinical. They're showing you that they've already done the math. They're doing a calculation here, and it's meant to prove a point. It just goes to show that for those who are serious about what they want, the old saying is true. When it comes to elections, loyalty is for the dogs. Good day and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Kenneth Johnson, Wali Bilal, Jamail Howard, Kenel Bender, and Fahim Carter. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.